Can I explain why bad things happen to good people? No. But then I can't explain why good things happen to people or bad things happen to people, or why good people are good or bad people are bad. I can only understand that every one of them is a child of God. And that whatever happens to each one of us matters. And what we do with the fact that it matters, that's what's really important. Because we get to go like this. And we get to know that inside of us and around us and within the condition of our life as it is right now, God cares. And if I care that God cares, I'm going to take care of what God cares for. But if I forget that God cares, if I forget God's presence, if I forget that every breath I take is a divine sense of spirit, I'm going to waste it. I'm going to waste my life. I'm going to waste my opportunities to be. I'm going to waste my opportunities to show that presence in this world and to feel it. Bartimaeus didn't get a new beginning, he got a new life. He got insight more than he got sight. And he had it before he got his sight. Insight comes first, by the way. You get that insight, that incense of God with us, and in that indwelling of God inside of my being, I begin to see the world differently. And we start to see that all people are capable of doing good and bad. All people are capable of living fully and freely. One of the blessings of my day yesterday was I attended Bill's funeral. And I got to hear and be reminded of not just the loss, but of the gift of every person in life. And I know this. I know in my head, and I was forgetting in my heart. I know that when you've known somebody, they are a part of you. Good, bad, or indifferent, they are a part of you. Years ago, when I was in college, I took special counseling courses and special preparation courses for the ministry, for specialized parts of ministry that I sometimes still do. But there was an old man who was the professor, and I mean old man. He had come out of retirement to teach this. His name was Archie McLaughlin. He'd actually been a Baptist minister, then a professor at McMaster University. He ended up in Kingston teaching at Queen's for a while in the early 70s. And when I met up with him, he was 80. And he had been in the Depression or in the early war years in isolated little remote communities in the prairies. He had no hair, not a piece of hair on him, because he lived and roomed as a young minister with a farm family in the West, and their farmhand tried to murder them all. He tried to poison them with arsenic, was lacing the food with them. They all had arsenic poisoning. They caught the guy, but Archie's lifelong affliction after that was arsenic removes hair, and it never grew back. But he taught us something. We were in a seminar, a group of us gathered around this table arguing over, this counseling situation on, who had done what in this situation and how you had observed it. He used to use a lot of role-playing in these settings, and so he was quizzing the class on what we had observed in the role-play and what had happened in the room. And we kept giving him what we thought was going on in the scenario. And finally he says, no, I was asking what was happening in the room. And we said, well, we told you. And he says, no, you didn't. You didn't notice that George, the janitor, came in and emptied the trash basket. And I went, well, big deal, so what? And he says, well, I just find that amusing because I know that all you guys are studying Greek and you're all struggling with Greek. I said, yeah. He says, George is a lawyer in Greece, but he can't practice in Canada because he doesn't have the credentials. So he's working at the university while he passes his bar exam in Canada. And he has his office right here, just next door to mine, his janitor's room. And he'd have taught all of you Greek if you'd asked him. I was in my third year. I hadn't seen that guy around for 3 years, never thought to ask him. And then he said this, and this is what sticks more than the rest of that story. What sticks is every person you meet is important. And he said it this way. He said, every life is a story. And the story of your life will never be complete until you know the stories of the people you meet. On the day that blind Bartimaeus was sitting by the side of the road, nobody wanted to know his story. Nobody cared about his story. He was considered evil or insignificant. It didn't matter what side of the line you wanted to walk on. But he had an insight that gave him new life, and he had an insight that could have transformed anybody who wanted to know him. God is as close as our breathing and as intimate as our knowing. And if we find ourselves griping about life, my story began with the man who was upset with the painter who didn't want to paint the right color. What I find sad about that story, he never took the time to find out what motivated that guy. Who was he? What was his story? Why was he the way he was? Instead of getting somebody fired, he might have been willing to be more compassionate and more understanding and more open. They still would have got the right color, but he would have learned so much more about life. Whether the stories are tragic, disturbing, distressing, sad, whether they open up other aspects of our own histories and past, whatever happens to us, we need to always remember God is here now. God is with us. And we have been given the spiritual tools to recognize, and we have been given the direction to move on in life. Our calling is not to be, the Olympics, but live higher, stronger, faster. And even in that quest, we have tragedy based on the quest for higher, stronger, faster, as we saw this week on the luge track. But there's still a lesson to be learned, and a life to be shared, and a love to be given. And it's not higher, stronger, faster that we want. It's bolder, deeper, wiser. That's what God calls us to be. Bolder in our living, deeper in our understanding, wiser in our relationships with one another. And as we grow in God, and we become new beings.